way to draw your own conclusion. That the Jewish people tell that Moshe was in Bhakti Pakad. Therefore, God forbid, Jewish people, that trouble is because uh, the commentator the Jewish triumph, the sea split from heaven. They're offered
There's a problem with the sound.
we accept the
The sound is not working and breaking up.
that says
Paying attention.
serve emotion. That
We are not hearing anything, every 10th word. So we need to stop the shiur, fix it so we can really benefit.
but there are to you. My hand. The Torah says, "Loredes minor." They
Is anybody listening? The sound is terrible.
down. The time is.
No one is listening.
I'm listening, but I can't fix it. And it's such a shame. Every week it's something. This week it's the worst.
No sound, you can't hear a thing. So, but
It's the
We're listening, but we're listening to each other. We're not hearing anything from the rabbi.
Yeah, what? I know what I mean. Yeah, for the benefit of everybody, I think the rabbi should start over. We can't hear anything.
You gotta tell Zohar that because I've sent him messages, but he's not hearing. So
Well,
nobody heard a thing since the beginning.
We need a new system.
every week it's the
I
same thing.
know, the system's not working.
We have a new expensive.
Rabbi, Baruch Hashem is working.
Aaron. Aaron has a choice. But is going to do it without. So we stole. So your ear to do with it. So the rabbis say here a great thing about the Jewish people. They like to give gold. Tovim la'egel notnim. You make an appeal for the egel, for the golden calf, successful. You make an appeal for the Mishkan, successful. The nature of the Jewish people is they're a giving people. So Aaron, he waits for Moshe, and Moshe doesn't show. It's already a day later. So somehow Aaron is complicit also. Aaron also doesn't see how he can do it without Moshe. So the basic idea here is that somehow the Jewish people as a whole cannot grasp the idea that there is a God that cannot be seen, cannot be understood, that's beyond all of our comprehension, and that is the God that we have to serve. They need some sort of tangible form of reality in order to be able to deal with it. So when Moshe is there, Moshe is the reality. Without Moshe, there's no reality at all. So in effect, they have to raise themselves another level for which they are incapable. And therefore, the sin of the golden calf can occur because there is no way that the Jewish people could deal with an omniscient, omnipotent God that cannot be seen or understood or comprehended. So it isn't that they believed in the golden calf. They believed that they had to have something that is representative of heaven to deal with. So they thought that would be Aaron. Aaron doesn't want to do it, so it'll be a calf. And we see throughout Tanakh that this is the challenge to the Jewish people. Yerovam ben Nevat, the first king of the 10 tribes. So the Gemara says that he was the greatest scholar of the time. The enormous Talmud Chacham. Says Simla Chadosha, he created new garments in Torah that hadn't been understood before. And yet he sets up calves that the Jewish people should worship. So it's not that they believe that the calf had any powers. It's they simply believe that there has to be something real. And without anything real, then it's the service of God is impossible. We see that Lahavdil Elef Havdolas, but we see it throughout human history that all of the other religions have something real. That's the basis of their service. So the Torah described one stream. We know why it came, because they needed something real. They needed Moshe, and Moshe didn't come down, and that's where they went off the rails. The Torah points out to us the danger of believing in a person, in a leader, no matter who he is. Throughout the Chumash, we find that the Torah warns us against it. I mentioned to you a number of times that the Meshech Chochmah points out to us that Moshe could never take the Jewish people into the land of Israel, because if he did, then we would be the religion of Moshe. That can't be. So we don't know where he's buried. We don't know anything. You know, imagine if we knew what it was Moshe's burial ground, right? What a business that would be. And the Lord took all of that away from us. So that's the danger of having belief in people. We are not the religion of Moshe. Moshe emes v'torah so emes. He gave us the Torah through Moshe, but it's not the religion of Moshe. So that was at the root of the Egel, was the belief in Moshe as being more than Moshe, and therefore they couldn't get along without him, and therefore they needed a reality. And then the reality, whatever the reality is, has to be an Egel. Let it be an Egel. It could be a flag. It could be whatever you want. It's enough. That's one stream of understanding, which really is backed up by the narration in the Torah. However, there are other streams There's a second stream that the whole story here is the Erev Rav. Who are the Erev Rav? So the Torah tells us that when the Jewish people went out of Egypt, there were other slaves, not just Jews, that were enslaved in Egypt. And there also were Egyptians that were on the bottom rung of Egyptian society. They had no choice and no chance in Egypt. And all of a sudden you can go out. You know, the Iron Curtain fell. You can leave. And not only that, the miracles and everything. Let's go along. So the Torah says, "V'gam erev rav Elohim mo'im Mitzrayim." A mixture of other peoples went with them, not Jews. There's a whole discussion as to whether or not they ever converted, so to speak. Whether they eventually integrated themselves completely into the Jewish people and they remained separate. But they're the ones that made this fuss. They're the ones that, so to speak, said we can't go on and we have to have an egel, etc. In other words, they brought their own religions with them. And in bringing their own religions with them, they corrupted the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people are tolerant. The Novi says, Ish b'shem Elohav Yelech. Let everyone go in the name of their God. Vanachnu, and we'll Melech b'shem Hashem, we'll go with our God. So, okay. So in a perfect world, that works. But it didn't work because the Erev Rav had a very, very corrupting influence on the Jewish people. And that's why the Medrash says that when the Erev Rav wanted to leave Egypt, so the Ribono Shel Olam told Moshe, what do you think? Should we take him or not? So Moshe said, sure, let's take them. Moshe is full of mercy. We'll bring them closer to Hashem. And the Ribono Shel Olam said, if you want to take them, but I'm not interested to take them. We see this in our time, it's not a comparable situation, but it gives us some light in the matter. 1 million people left the Soviet Union to come to the land of Israel. 200,000 of them are not Jewish. Haven't figured out how to swallow them. They're a political party. The Russian Orthodox Church is the fastest growing Christian church in the country. They have schools. They serve in the army. How are you going to pick them apart? So maybe today you can, but 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, who knows what it will look like? And that's why the Gemara in Yevamah says, Koshim Gerin li Yisrael kesapachas. Converts are difficult to absorb because there's all level of commitment within converts. So we live in a world We live in a world where a man can say, I'm a woman and get away with it. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's an admiral in the United States Navy that says he's a woman, dresses like a woman. He's got a voice deeper than mine. But you can say whatever you want. So you can say you're Jewish. The whole argument about conversion here in Israel is that argument, right? We can convert all 200,000 in 2 days. But what will that do to the fiber, to the inner essence of the people? So they're the ones that brought the ego. And that therefore there's a degree of responsibility upon Moshe himself for having taken them out. Because they're the ones that brought about this catastrophe. So that's another stream about the question of the Erev Rav. In our time, it's hard to identify anybody. The Gemara in Tanakh, we see it in the Gemara that when Ezra came in the Bayis Sheni, he demanded that the Kohanim prove their yichus, prove where they are. So we all know, if we made Aliyah, that the state of Israel wants a letter from a rabbi that you're Jewish. I don't know if a letter from a rabbi proves anything. Most of the time it proves that at least you have a relationship to the rabbi, which is also positive. I remember that when I made Aliyah, my wife and we went to get our passports here. So the lady at the Misrad Apnim said, how do I know you're Jewish? You don't have a letter from a rabbi. So I said, but if you look on the list, I'm one of the rabbis that you accept my letter. That, She said, yes, but that doesn't mean that you're Jewish. So I had to run and get Rabbi Feldman to write me a letter that I'm Jewish. But when I thought about it later, I thought that's terrific, Good for that clerk, right? But who knows what goes on? So the Erev Rav is a problem, has always been a problem. So there's a third stream about the ego. The third stream about the ego is the whole world is worshiping calves. The whole world that we're talking about, the ancient world, but the modern world, we have our own ego. You see in our time how the craziest ideas become the norm. So the whole world is worshiping Agolim. And the Jewish people have a Torah that says, nothing. In halacha, there's great discussion whether, for instance, you can have on the parochas any symbolism whatsoever of an animal. There's a great discussion on halacha regarding stained glass windows, because all of those things came to us from the outside. They're not intrinsic. And on the Mishkan, the interesting thing about the Mishkan is most of the Jewish people never saw the Aron HaKodesh, never saw the Kruvim. It was in the Holy of Holies. The only one that saw it was the Kohen Gadol once a year. So there was no physical manifestation that people saw. So it's hard to be the exception. It's very hard to be the exception. And the Torah told us, Lo mirubchem, I am not choosing you because you're many. Ki atem amat mikol amim, you will be very few. So you're going to tell me that 7 billion people are wrong, and maybe 13 million, 14 million are almost right. Well, is that fair? Hard to deal with that. So therefore, we will adapt ourselves to the majority of civilization. We will create a Judaism that's not so much out of line with the general culture, with the general understanding of religion, which you think about is what originally German Reform came to do in the 18th and 19th centuries, and the forces that exist today, secularism, etc. K'chol hagoyim beis Yisrael. So we find that the Navi Yechezkel, at the time after the destruction of the first temple, and he's in exile in Bavel. So the Navi says in the 12th chapter, he gets up one morning and he gets a visit from the board of directors. And they tell him, listen, we're never going back there to Israel. That period is over. We're here in exile. So now we're like everybody else. So who needs the whole package? We don't need why should Shabbos be Saturday and the whole world had it on Sunday? So we quit. That's what they told us. Please quit. No more. So the words of the Navi. So heaven asked him, what did you answer them? What was your response to this statement? So he said, well, he had no answer, he said, Aho Hashem Elokim ato yodea. Lord God, only you know how to answer. I have no answer for that. The Navi is ready to give up. He says, K'chol hagoyim beis Yisrael. But the Navi says, you tell me, Mo Omar Aleim, what should I say to them? Kol Amar Hashem Tzvakos. So the Lord says, Hoyo lo yiyeh hadover hazeh. Tell them to forget it. It's never going to be Kol hagoyim beis Yisrael. I'll give you the United Nations. I'll give you anti-Semitism. I'll give you all sorts of things. They don't care whether it's Saturday or Sunday. They don't care whether you put on the black boxes or don't put them on. They don't care what you eat or what you don't eat. When I was the head of the OU, we received, I'm sure it still happens, we received thousands of letters a year from people protesting the Jew tax on food. They thought the OU is a tax that Jews impose upon food and that they, the Goyim, have to pay the tax. How do you answer that? That we had purposely made an arrangement with every company that the fee that the OU charged to pay the mashgiach, etc., was to be paid from the advertising budget and not from the manufacturing budget. In other words, it added no material cost to the product. But instead of advertising in the Yiddish newspaper to attract Jewish customers, they didn't do any advertising, they just made it kosher. But to explain all of that is useless. Can't help. So if you make an egel, that's why it says beyond pakti pakaditi. God said, you think that by making an egel, you're going to get away with it. Now they're going to like you because it's Sunday and not Saturday. Because you dress like them and you talk like them and you change your name, everything is fine. I'm telling you, it isn't going to happen that way. Beyond pakti pakaditi, I'll remember, you'll be remembered. The last 4,500 customers for Auschwitz were people whose grandparents had converted to Christianity. I knew many Holocaust survivors. So to me, it was divided into two. There were those who knew why they were there, and those who never understood why they were there. So if you never even understood why, so it made the burden triply difficult. So that's also in the egel. The egel is Saturday or Sunday. And that we're gonna, the main thing is, can the rabbi play a guitar? And really doesn't matter. And if you say you're Jewish, you're Jewish. And don't bother me with the details. And you think that that somehow is going to save us, physically and spiritually. So the Navi said, "Oh, you know, yeah, no, don't think that way. That's mistaken from the beginning." So we have here these three ideas regarding the causes of the egel. Moshe, belief in Moshe, and the Erev Rav, and then the ability to somehow blend into the non-Jewish world as well. And these are continual problems. They've never been solved. Every generation faces them. And that's really what makes the story so poignant and so timely and so difficult. Because of the fact that these are issues which go to the heart of being Jewish and the survival of the Jewish people and our purpose in so doing. So have a wonderful Shabbat, everyone. Thank you for coming. And probably 2 weeks, because of the marathon, nobody will be able to get here. So we'll do it in 2 weeks. Kol Tov Selam.
Quick question. I'm having about I'm having
Yeah.
well before.